Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Thursday night, the 2nd of September, 2021. After yesterday, it's going to be very hard to forget yesterday in terms of what the ultimate outcome was, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. The Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York at 631-756-1125 is the telephone number. And they were actually starting to get ready for winter. They got salt coming in, and salt prices are way up with everything else that's been going on. So just bear that in mind. Might want to get it early. And the website is omnitruevalue.com. Wholesale holiday lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs. Whether you want your home decorated for the holidays, and don't forget Halloween is coming up, but maybe you want to decorate your neighbor's home, make them look good, and get paid for it. Well, they're at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York, and their phone number is 631-957-5106, and the website is liholidaylighting.com. So I think Mr. Rayo should be on board. There he is.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, this was very strange today, Joe. Waking up, I don't even know where to begin with everything that happened last night. It was just happening so quickly. I never even knew there was such a thing as a flash flood emergency. For one thing, I had to go look it up. The chairman, Scott Briller, asked me this question. I said, I have no idea. I never heard of it before. But so basically, it's when the flash flooding is so bad that you have to declare an emergency for it, and it's usually you're going to do that while it's happening. I never would have, anytime we have these weather events like this, there's always something, that, at least one thing, and sometimes it's multiple things that happen that you never would have considered. If you would, for example, so far the death toll is 23 in the Northeast, 23. The death toll in the Gulf Coast at landfall from Ida is, from what I know, is 1. Okay, so that was one factor, and a sad one that never figured. It never would have occurred to me that people drowned in their basement apartments in New York City. I mean, who would have thought that something like that would have could have happened? You think about flash flooding, you think about, most of the time you think about suburbia, you think about rural areas, you think about rivers, heavy rains that rise, go over the, people on roadways, et cetera, et cetera. I just never would have even fathomed the idea that you'd have flash flooding in a metro city that would flood people's basements and people would drown. But I mean, we had floods in Nashville back a couple of months ago that did the same thing. I mean, I guess you just don't think it's going to happen where you are. But that was just last night. It was just something. It's going to be tough for me to. Well, I'm not going to forget it. At least, and also from the meteorological standpoint, I mean, it was just an amazing night.
And a lot of people were saying, why didn't anybody tell us that we were going to get this much rain? And what more could we have possibly have done, Joe?
Well, we can't physically go ourselves and drag people out of their homes. I mean, I'm not sure what. I mean, you can tell somebody that something is going to happen. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is. You put the information out there, and people have to have. They do what they do what they want with it. They make the decisions based on the information you put out, and that's what else are we supposed to do? This was very well advertised and very well forecasted.
Said back on Monday. I mean, I said 2 to 4, 2 to 5 inches. Then on Tuesday, I brought up the fact on my Facebook page that the NAM model was calling for over 3 inches of rain
We talked
in
about that here. We
one
talked about
six
it
hour,
here.
yeah, 1 6 hour period. Then yesterday, on Facebook, I upped it to 3 to 6. But we also spoke about the interaction of Ida with that upper level disturbance that was coming in from the Great Lakes, and how, as they teleconnected, if you will, that
Right.
disturbance could possibly serve as kind of like anabolic steroids to the remnant effects of Ida. And if I recall correctly, I did say this at least once on our show, that with the fact that this is tropical moisture and the fact that sometimes when you see this type of interaction, maybe we ought to take what the model guidance is suggesting and maybe double or even triple that. And if I recall, and if I'm not quoting you directly, you said, all right, 8 inches I can see. He said, please, let's not go to 12 inches. Let's stay away from 12 inches or whatever. And maybe we should have gone to 12
Well, maybe
inches.
in hindsight, yeah. I mean, my point was, it's so hard to put a top number on it. I mean, you try to visualize a foot of rain. I mean, you talk this if you consider this 100-year event, a once in a century event. It's not even a once in a generational event. People don't live long enough to see something like this once, let alone twice. I can only say, I mean, in terms of comparison, uh, the August, I believe it was August 2013. I don't remember the actual day, when Islip set and they hold the state record for 24-hour rainfall of 13.5 inches in one day, and that came during an overnight and into the morning, and it all fell in about 4 or 5 hours time, and the flooding out here was just beyond description. That it was that kind of magnitude. So I certainly, having been in the middle of that, since I only live 2 miles from Islip MacArthur Airport, I certainly know what it must have felt like to see all that rain coming down and everything else. It just at this time, it happened over the metro areas, and here where I was, I mean, I probably got about 4 or 5 inches of rain north of North Shore, north of the Long Island Expressway got hit very hard, especially as you go west up into western Suffolk and Nassau County. The South Shore really didn't, got mostly a couple of inches or even a little bit less. It was I mean, really, and the other comparison I would make to also is, we talked about how similar this was to Camille. And people don't, when you look back at the history of Camille, the one thing that doesn't get talked about as much is that more people actually died from the flooding rains that occurred from Camille in the Central Appalachians, when the low tracked up northward into Tennessee and then turned east and then moved off the Virginia coast. There was an upper trough that came down and kind of gave it a bit of a zap, and moisture came in from from the southeast, and you got lift in the mountains, and they created these catastrophic rains of 30 inches or more in less than 24 hours time. And then it went out off the Virginia coast and went goodbye. Well, when you look at this, both in terms of where it formed and where it tracked, it took and how it behaved. It really behaved in very similar fashion. It's just that it went inland about 100 or so miles further west than Camille did, and it went further north by about 100 to 150 miles further north than Camille did. But this time around, the big rains were in the metro, in Philadelphia, in New York City, and in all the surrounding areas out to eastern Pennsylvania. And just amazing. And this is the third tropical system. Each one's getting a little worse, Joe, from the standpoint of rain. I think we got 2 or 3 inches of rain from Elsa, and that at least the top amounts were, maybe a little bit more. Henri produced some areas getting 6 to 8 inches of rain just 10 days ago, which really set the stage for yesterday because the ground was so saturated. Now we got some areas anywhere between 8 and 12 inches of rain. So what's the next one going to be? 18 to 24? I mean, how much higher can you go?
Well, the thing that really annoys me, both on Facebook and also watching local television coverage, is the way they're treating this like something like this has never happened before in the history of New York City or in the tri state metropolitan area. Really? Well, I must tell you that in 1999, Floyd, which rolled right over the New York metropolitan area, was every bit as devastating in terms of flooding and in terms of river flooding and all kinds of mayhem on many of the parkways and roadways, every bit as horrible as what we just saw last night and into this morning. Now, admittedly, I don't recall Floyd producing 3 inches of rain in a single hour. It certainly didn't do it in New York City. But Floyd was a major, catastrophic, destructive flooding storm. And then, if memory serves me correct, we saw something very similar to Floyd just 12 years later with Hurricane Irene, or the remnants thereof. And a few weeks after Irene, we had a smaller, still rather robust tropical cyclone that came on by, only to add to our anguish and agony, by the name of Lee. And now, I'm sitting there watching coverage last night of the same roadways, let's say and parkways in Westchester, which I've seen flood out over and over and over again. And what they do, and when I say the reporters, what they do is they look for people. They say, what do you think about this? And if somebody says, I don't remember it ever being like this before, bingo, that's going to make airtime. There might be somebody else. That might be somebody else who said, well, I haven't seen anything this bad since, Irene, or maybe going back to Floyd. That's never going to make the air. What they want people to see is people that say, this never happened before. I can't remember the last time it happened. And I'm sorry. Right. I'm sorry to say that. And maybe I'm ruffling some feathers here.
It's true.
But this is the, and the same thing, we pointed this out in February in Texas when people were talking about, I don't remember it getting this cold. I don't remember snow like this or ice like this. And what I did was I went back over the archives, the New York Times archives, and I found a 1986 storm of the century for Texas. And it read almost exactly the way the headlines were reading this year in February for Texas. These things happen. They happen, I think, a lot more frequently than once every 100 or 50 or 25 years. And by the way,
no. Remember, Joe. Remember, we never had storms like this before.
Please. You know, he was looking away. He was trying to find a way to brush away a logical, or as Ricky would say on I Love Lucy, he was looking for a logical explanation for what happened with Sandy. And Sandy, we know what happened with Sandy. Sandy took an unusual track. It wasn't. I tell you, we had many storms before Sandy, many tropical cyclones that passed through this area that were a lot more potent than Sandy. What made Sandy the storm that it became, and the legendary storm, is not that it tracked immediately parallel to the eastern seaboard. It came in, it came up, and it curved into central New Jersey, placing the tri-state area in the worst possible place if you're going to have a hurricane or a tropical cyclone, the northeast quadrant. And there, with all of those strong gusty winds from the south and southeast, pushing all that water onto Long Island, which never happened with many of the other storms. Many of the other storms produced a northeasterly wind. But this one had the perfect scenario, southeasterly winds pushing all of that water across Long Island onto the sound shore of Westchester. That's why, even though it was a bare minimal hurricane, or maybe just a very strong tropical storm, it still managed to do the destruction that it did. You just got to examine and look at all of these things and play it right down the middle. And I said last night, we had Floyd. 12 years later, we had Irene. I said, you go by that, all right. So maybe we were coming up on our due time to get another hellacious flooding tropical system. All right, it wasn't 12 years, it was more like 10, but still, it seems that, at least to me, in increments of approximately 10 or 12 years, we are destined to get storms of this type and this magnitude. Please don't tell me, oh my goodness, this is the worst storm I could remember. I never saw anything like this. Yes, you did. You just had a little lapse of memory. It happens, and
Or
it will
either that,
happen again.
or you were not born in the last century. You were
Right.
born in this century. Let me just add two things to that list of past storms. If you want to go a little further back, we had a tropical depression, if I recall, in November of 1977. That produced almost 8 inches of rain in one day in New York
I
City, and
remember that.
for a long time that number stood as the daily 24-hour record. And
Right.
if you want to go back further, why don't we go back to 1955 when Hurricanes Connie and Diane came in 4 days apart in eastern
Right.
North Carolina and produced flooding rains up the East Coast. You had back-to-back hurricanes 4 days apart going
Right.
into
And don't
almost the same place and then and moving northward.
do you
So
know the 1950s, Joe? We had far more hurricanes and
yes,
tropical systems that affected our tri. Don't forget Hazel, and Hazel did a dead hit Toronto dead on, but still gave us a pretty good swipe as well. We had far more stuff. How come nobody was talking back in the 1950s when we were getting one tropical cyclone after another after another? How come nobody was talking about climate change and global? And I spoke with
you didn't
Neil
have a
Frank.
24-hour. You didn't have a 24-hour news cycle, by the way,
Right,
in the
right.
1950s.
And
Let's
I
be
spoke
clear.
and I spoke to the former hurricane, the director of the National Hurricane Center, Neil Frank. And Neil Frank told me that for whatever reason, hurricanes or frequency of hurricanes seem to come in cycles. That there was
Right.
a lot of storm activity in the 50s. Donna in 1960 pretty much put an end to all of that. Then we had to wait until 1976, 16 years later, to get a direct hit from Bell. Then another 10 years, and then we had to wait for Gloria. Then 6 more years, and we got Bob. And then ever since Bob, we've had the frequency increase. And once again, we're in this cycle now where we're seeing more in terms of tropical activity. And Neil Frank told me, he said, they didn't know why. They don't really know why, but every so often at spans of 20 or 30 years, we get a lot of this stuff.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it quiets down.
Yeah.
And then after another 20, 30 years, we get a lot of it again.
Well, the 50s were an Atlantic East Coast decade. In
Right.
1954, we had 3 hurricanes, Carol, Esther, and Ione, I believe, all impact this area within 6 weeks. 55, you had Connie and Diane. I don't remember, but I think in 56 there was something that came up the East Coast as well. And then you had Hazel as we moved later on in the decade. There were a lot of storms that impacted the East Coast, a lot of storms that impacted the Northeast, New England, the Mid-Atlantic states. And yeah, then it goes quiet for whatever reason. Even in terms of the activity is cyclical. With the satellites that we have now, no storm escapes, so the numbers are higher. You have to wonder. Edna, there's another one that was mentioned. Christinapedia mentioning Edna. There was another one that came up here in the 50s. So who knows how many storms that didn't make the count because they didn't know they were out there, or they lasted maybe 24 hours, or now they make something a tropical storm. We saw what happened over the weekend. We had Tropical Storm Julian. They put out maybe 2 advisories, and then it was gone.
Right.
So,
Remember a few years ago, there was a storm off of Portugal, and
yes,
whoever was the forecaster said, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, if it looks like a tropical cyclone and it acts a little bit like one, we're going to call it that. And I said, I looked at that and I said, would you have done that 10 or 15 years ago? Calling that a tropical system? It came and it went within 2 or 3 days, whatever. But they added that into the then record number of tropical systems that we had back in 2005. And I think that was another reason why 2005 was so much higher, more than any other year beforehand. That with this technology, they micromanage, I think, a lot of the forecasters at the National Hurricane Center with their Dvorak units, and they zoom in with the news goes 16, and they say, well, we're contemplating this. It looks like it could be a tropical, so we're going to give it a name, or we're going to call it Invest 96L or whatever. I do believe, honestly, quite honestly, that part of the reason why we've seen so many more tropical systems over the last 10 or 15 years is because of the fact that they are looking at every little thing and judging whether or not this could be and maybe and is a tropical cyclone or some sort of thing, a tropical system.
Well, look, we saw back in, when was it, in May, there was a couple of them out in the Atlantic that got named, and we remember, I remember we were saying, you wonder whether these storms would have even been talked about at all back 20, 30 years ago. They probably wouldn't have. And since they really didn't have any impact on anyone, then they would have not made the list. So now all those storms make the list because they have the technology to look at these things, as you said, almost in a micromanaged type way. They can. We had that hurricane, that storm a couple of years ago. Was it Beryl? In the tropical Atlantic, where the gales extended out maybe 10 miles. It was basically a glorified severe thunderstorm,
Right.
So yeah, it oddly enough, through all of this, in terms of what they've seen with the averages increasing, what has not increased is the average number of major hurricanes. When they redid the numbers and brought them up, when you and I were starting out, the average for the Atlantic was 10. Now it's 14. Okay, how much of that is from being, with all the extra satellites and being able to see these systems that used to never get named? But one thing that hasn't changed is the fact that the number of major hurricanes in the prior 30-year decade that they had with the normals was 3. And when they redid the calculations, guess what? The number of major hurricanes is 3. So that part of it hasn't changed. There's a lot they don't understand, and they admit it. The forecasters at the Hurricane Center will tell you that when it comes to, they've gotten really good with track. This storm's a perfect example of that. But they still do have issues when it comes to figuring out strength. So there's still a lot that they don't know. A lot of subtleties in the atmosphere that impact these monster storms, and obviously we don't. Joe, what happened yesterday is not something that we can fall back and say, "Oh, this," we've really never seen something like this because it's once in 100-year event. So we're likely not to see it. You and I will probably not see something like this again in our lifetime, most likely. But we don't have, when you don't have that, when you haven't had a similar event in your memory file in your brain, it's hard to, you don't really have, you don't have something to fall back on and say, oh, it looks like this. We did the best we could, noting the similarities in terms of the track and everything else with Camille, and that actually didn't work out too bad as a bit of an analog.
Right. Well, Sam Petullo, who many of you probably that name doesn't ring a bell at all, but Sam Petullo was the mayor of Bound Brook, New Jersey, and he was a weather watcher first for Bob Harris on WOR, and then later for Bill Corbell when he was the morning meteorologist on the Rambling with Gambling show at WOR. And Bound Brook, New Jersey, in 1999 was devastated by the remnants of Floyd. I think there were people, with rowboats, in the streets, tremendous flooding. And now what we saw yesterday and last night, again, basically the same area getting flooded out. And on top of that, they had to deal with tornadoes in central New Jersey as well. And just, I'm sitting here and I remember Sam, I'm not sure what happened to him. It's been a long, long time since well, he was a weather watcher, as I said, for WOR, and WOR hasn't done that sort of thing for almost 2 decades now. But I'm saying to myself, I distinctly remember his observations, and I distinctly remember Bound Brook, New Jersey, and all the craziness that went on down there. And then to sit at home last night and to watch on television and see somebody from, again, Bound Brook, New Jersey saying, I don't remember this ever happening. This was that really gets me upset. I'm sorry, but
that's Joe. That's why I haven't sat and watched a television newscast in decades. I didn't even watch the newscast when we were working together, and you know that. I mean,
Yeah.
I no, I just don't
And I
watch.
heard the president today, of course, in the aftermath of last night and the aftermath of this whole week with what happened down in New Orleans and Louisiana and Mississippi or whatever like that. And he said today, and I don't know if it was a flip comment or whatever. Maybe a lot of these politicians I don't really think understand. They grab the first little bit of a headline and immediately put it in their heads, and then they spew it out at a moment's notice. The president said, we're going to see a lot more of this now. It's going to come more frequently because of
Ugh.
climate change and global warming. And the plain truth of the matter is, and I've spoken with a number of climatologists and meteorologists. Jeff Tung, who was the science
Yeah.
coordinator at the National Weather Service, I did a report with him, and he said that the main thing behind global warming and climate change are, and I agree with him, is that we're going to see storms with greater magnitude, more robust storms, more potent storms. Nothing having to do with more frequent storms. The storms will be more powerful, but they're not going to come more frequently. And you can't really use that as a. If you use that, then you have to come up with some kind of an explanation as to why in the 50s, as I just pointed out, we were getting storm after storm and
Right.
hit after hit from tropical systems. So it really is not the frequency, it's the potency. Yeah, well, I'll go with that, but not really the frequency. But again, the president of the United States must have heard somebody say something like that along those, or just maybe he put it in his head that it means things are going to be getting a lot worse, and equated that with we're going to see more frequent types of systems like what we saw last night and this morning. And it really is not the case. More potent, yes, but more frequent, no.
Sole purpose of television news is to drive rage.
If it bleeds, it
It
leads.
leads.
Yep.
Exactly. It's to drive rage to make money. The sole purpose of social media is to drive rage to make money. Period. End of sentence. I mean,
And
that's it.
Ken Mazzillo on the chat board. Wasn't there a weather person on WR years back named Stuart Soroka? Yes. Oh my goodness, I can't even believe that somebody actually remembers that. Yeah, Stuart Soroka was on the WOR Rambling with Gambling morning show back in the late 60s and early 70s. And then a behind-the-scenes weather forecaster at CBS News Radio 888, a fellow by the name of Bob Harris, who during his tenure at WR was known as Dr. Bob, took over for Stuart Soroka. Soroka went up to Massachusetts, and then after Bob Harris, there was Bill Corbell, and now I don't think they have anybody over at WR anymore. I think the Weather Channel or something. But back in the day, Joe, I don't know if I had the chance in the early 70s when WOR radio was at 1440 Broadway. I had a chance to visit Bob Harris. I think the reason why I got into this business is that one visit in October of 1973 to the WOR Weather Center. Your eyes would have been bulging out.
Oh, I'm sure.
Every toy that you possibly could have wanted, Bob Harris had. Facsimile machines. He had a live hookup to the WX-88 radar at Rockefeller Center. Everything. And the other thing was, and I guess this in part was due to John Gambling, because John Gambling was into weather. They had they had like 50 people who were WR weather watchers, and they would call the station collect, like people like Sam Petula from Bound Brook, New Jersey, or Reverend Delano up in Mahopac, New York. They would call the station collect. Bob Harris told me they would get like a $5,000 a year phone bill from all the people who would call in. And that was great stuff way back then. And now, of course, you listen to a radio station today, and more or less it's like rip and read or syndicated stuff.
You just kind of jarred a memory when you said about call and collect. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember this, but there used to be a commercial, and I think it was for either furniture or a mattress company or something, and they would give the phone number. It was like Murray Hill 59099 or something, and then they would say, "Out of town, please call collect."
Right.
And I think they had for years. There was a Saks warehouse on 138th Street in the Bronx, and the building lies against
Right.
the
Right up against
the Bruckner
the
Expressway, and they
expressway.
had a
Yeah.
big sign on the side of the building. Was a big painted sign that went like 15 floors or whatever it was, however high it was, and it was an advertisement for that. I can't remember the furniture company or the mattress company. They run, they always had ads running in New York City. Anyway, you jarred that memory. I just kept thinking of the voice on the commercial would always give the number was Murray Hill 7 something or Murray Hill 5, and then after the number said out of town, please call collect.
And George Carlin, the late great George Carlin, did a takeoff on that, and his bit would finish with "In town, call direct. Out of town, lots of luck."
Yeah, exactly. All right, just a couple of things that came out tonight. This was from Mount Holly at 5 of 7. So you can find this on the Mount Holly website, by the way. So far, and this is what the headline says: 7 confirmed tornadoes so far. Damage surveys continue. So here's the rundown from yesterday. The Malika Hill, New Jersey tornado in Gloucester County. That is confirmed in EF3. That was the one show that we had on at the top of the show yesterday with the video. That was in EF3, gust 150. Then there was a tornado, the Fort Washington, Upper Dublin Township to Horsham Township in Pennsylvania and Montgomery County. That's a confirmed EF2 tornado with estimated winds up to 130. Then the third is the Edgewater Park, New Jersey in Burlington County to Bristol, Pennsylvania, Bucks County, confirmed EF1, estimated winds 90 miles an hour. Chester County, Oxford, PA, confirmed tornado. The fifth one is the Buckingham Township, Pennsylvania, and Bucks County, a confirmed EF1 with winds estimated to be 100 miles an hour. The sixth one is the Princeton, New Jersey, Mercer County tornado, which was a confirmed EF0 with estimated winds of 75. And the seventh one is Upper Makefield Township, Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, a confirmed tornado. Now, we did have a tornado warning for New York City yesterday evening after the show was done.
9 o'clock.
Right.
East. They were talking about East Tremont and the Throgs Neck Bridge, and my mother and my sister live like that was the epicenter.
Right.
I'm calling up my sister, and you know what my sister was doing? She was like laughing. He says, oh my goodness. She was like trying to imitate the Wizard of Oz, and I'm screaming at her over the phone. I'm saying, this is not joking. This is, I don't know. There's some people, they see that and they say, like, oh, well,
Yeah, exactly. This ain't Kansas.
Right.
There were a few people I saw, a few Long Island folks out not too far from where I am, saying that something came through. And I'll tell you this, when I went out this morning, there was a lot of debris down. So a few people thought that maybe something spun up coming up from the South Shore and then moving up toward the North Shore in Suffolk County. Mainly east of Route 112, somewhere in that vicinity. So I haven't seen anything in terms of any kind of confirmation. As far as rainfall amounts are concerned, Hunterdon County got hit very, very hard in New Jersey. And I saw they had Flemington in Hunterdon County had 11 inches. That's one of the higher amounts that I saw. Mercer County, Hopewell Township, 9.02. Carteret in Middlesex County, 9.10. Monmouth County, now the amounts were far less, as you got toward the coast and then moved south down into South Jersey, 5.18 in Matawan. I'm just giving you just a couple of top numbers here. Long Hill Township in Morris County, 7.56. And as far as, and you can go on Mount Holly's website and also on the Upton website, and you can pull down their recent statements. As far as the ones around New York are concerned, and I do also have a graphic, by the way. Well, the odd thing with the Central Park the 1 hour record, we just set the 1 hour record back 10 days ago with Henri.
1.95.
Right, and it got broken like 9 or 10 days afterward. So some of the bigger amounts coming from the Upton office, Stamford in Connecticut, 8.10, Middlesex County, Connecticut, Clinton, 8.37, Seymour, 8.72, and that's in New Haven County. New London County, 8.58, in Uncasville, Uncasville, Uncasville. Bergen County in New Jersey, North Arlington, Waldwick, 8.59. I know Janet Dunn's, I think she said she had about 6 or 7 inches of rain where she is. In Westwood, Essex County, Maplewood, 8.39. Harrison, oh, this has got to be Anthony in Harrison, 8.72. So if Anthony measured 8.72, they got 8.72, not 8.73 or 8.71, 8.72, because I know Anthony measured it. And I mean that in the most loving way, because that man is, I mean, when it comes to weather, he's absolute top notch. Newark, 8.44. East Tremont in the Bronx, Joe, 7.79. Brooklyn, which is kind of big, I don't know where in Brooklyn this was measured, 7.76, but the other numbers kind of confirm that. Glen Cove in Nassau County, 9.09. In Suffolk and Orange County, Stewart, 7.32. Mayapack by you, Joe, 7.28. In Flushing, 6.90. In Queens, Staten Island, highest observation there, 9.64. Rockland, 5.90. And in Suffolk, Oldfield, 7.20. Port Jeff, 6. I'm only about 3 miles from Port Jefferson, where I am, 6.64 in Port Jefferson. And Sound Beach, which is where I am right now, 5.57. So northern half of Long Island, you look at the South Shore numbers, they were less than half of that. So this was really impressive. And I'll bring up the graphic representation of this that I got from the Weather Service. What did I do with it? I thought I saved it. What did I save it under? Oh, good. I called it that. All right, never mind.
Oh, by the way, I'm on that list too. If you're looking at the Putnam County list here.
Oh, is that you? What was your number?
3 miles north of Putnam Valley, 4.61 inches.
Nice.
And that was it went 21 hours. It started at 6 a.m. on the 1st and ended at 3 a.m. on the 2nd. And we had 4.6. And that was, I think I may have mentioned that my Davis weather station had finally, bit the dust. The tipping spoon wasn't working, and it was not charging properly. The battery, it has a little solar panel, so at night it can keep the charge and stay. Anyway, we replaced that unit with a completely new unit. I climbed up onto the mast the day before the storm to make sure that everything was in proper order. And the funny thing is, when it rains really hard, it puts out a message on the board. It's raining cats and dogs! ! And it continued to say that for like 6 or 8 straight hours. When it finally stopped doing that, let's say around 1 a.m. this morning, I said, I think the worst is over. It's not raining cats and dogs anymore, according to the weather station. But we got 4.3 yesterday and an additional 0.31 today for a grand total of 4.61 inches. And Brewster Hill, I should say, in Putnam Valley, Putnam County, at 2.68 inches. So, it varied across this area, this zone, but most areas picked up anywhere from like 3 to 6, and in the places that were near that stalled weather front and where the upper level disturbance again kind of helped to juice up the remnant feature of Ida. That's where you saw in parts of New Jersey, especially the 8, the 10, and the 11-inch rain amounts. It was an amazing storm.
It certainly was. And here, this is you see the graphic representation there on the screen. That is the purple is 6 inches. The darker purple is 8 inches, and then that gray, those grayish dots are all 10 inches or more. And the reds are all, the lightest shade of red is where 3 starts. And you can see how far north and west it got, and also how far south and east. And again, remember, in a lot of areas, the ground was so saturated that after the first inch came down, or even less than that, the water just started to run off. So Ida is now swirling away somewhere through Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and moving right along as a non-tropical low-pressure system that still probably has a fair amount of tropical moisture with it. And in the meantime, we got the payoff today with this incredibly cleaned out air mass. The day after a hurricane, when you get that northern jet involved, boy, does it just clean all the dirt out of the air. And it was just an absolutely beautiful blue sky, sunshine kind of day with a nice breeze and that dry air making it all the way down the eastern seaboard into the southeast. Much welcomed. And as far as the radar is concerned, I did save the loop from last night, Joe, just as we went off the air. As you remember, this is what it looked like with I don't know how many counties that was that were all under flash flood warnings, and we still. This was before they had the tornado warning in New York City. The time. Let me just check the time frame on this. This was the last frame. Yeah, this was at 8:52. This was at 8:52 last night. So then I haven't refreshed it since. So now I'm going to say goodbye to that. We'll give it a quick refresh, and you'll notice it's totally quiet and just about everywhere in the Northeast. A little bit of leftover rain up in Maine, a few showers and storms down in Florida and along the Gulf Coast. And we've got the next. This is our weather system that's coming in I think, for Sunday, Joe, with these showers that are back in parts of Minnesota. That's going to be some kind of little front that'll come on through. But the holiday weekend, say what I said yesterday. I think Saturday could be the best of the 3. Monday will be okay, and even Sunday may not be too bad. There might be some showers early and maybe a shower late, and hopefully some sun in between.
Everything is going to be moving along again. It's going to be a progressive pattern, again, like we saw in June and July, and we stopped seeing in August. We're not going to have these long stretches of 5 and 6 and 10 days of heat and humidity, oppressive humidity. We'll get it. There will be times when it'll get a bit warm, a bit muggy, a bit humid, but it's not going to last very long, because you know that somewhere upstream there's going to be another front and another surge of dry and pleasant air moving in. And tonight here in the Hudson Valley, Joe, going to be getting well down into the 50s, and well north and west of here could even see the 40s come daybreak tomorrow morning. Same places that just a day or two ago probably were running fans and air conditioners. Tonight, nature's going to do her part, and who knows, maybe even, again, in some of those outlying areas, somebody will be groping for a blanket before morning tomorrow.
So looking at the upper air pattern over the next couple of weeks, or at least the next 10 days, we pointed out yesterday in a brief look at this. I don't know, did we even look at the long range yesterday? Maybe briefly, but it's trough after trough. And then the one that's over us now, of course, you can see how far south it goes, all the way down into the southeastern part of the United States. And that's going to pull out, but there's one right behind it that drops in. And on the right, you can see Hurricane Larry. This trough that drops in early next week is going to lift out, and then another trough drops in right behind it. Joe, I think the Atlantic ridge is a little stronger today on the models, and on this last run, Larry makes a rather close pass to Bermuda. So this is
right.
a little bit further to the left, but ultimately, you know, unless the second trough for later next week drops in a little bit further to the west, I still think this is going to be a recurve. The ridge of the Atlantic still isn't quite strong enough to drive it. You want to get it. You'll worry if it gets inside 70 west. You don't want it to happen there. I kind of misspoke there. But what I meant was, if it gets inside of 70, then you start really paying attention. But this doesn't look like. It's got a long way to go. the upper air would have to change a lot, and what prevents that really from happening is that you have this trough coming into the west coast that's going to be kicking the system ahead of it, and everything will just move along and it'll go up and out. Although this one goes right over Newfoundland on this particular run, so we'll keep an eye in case it comes a little bit further to the left in the coming days. After that, the trough does lift out. We get into a bit of an upper ridge. This will be for the weekend of the 12th, 13th, and it kind of hangs for a couple of days, and then you start to get more troughs dropping into the eastern part of the United States. So we'll, just like you said, Joe, it doesn't look. I mean, it doesn't look like we're going to be going into any kind of long duration stretches of heat and humidity. Maybe we string together a couple of days at some point, but it shouldn't be anything longer than that.
Well, you got to understand that we're heading now, through the month of September, and so those 80-degree days are going to become fewer and fewer. Although I do know that was last year, the year before, I think we hit 90 on the 2nd of October. But we're going to be seeing the trending of the temperatures downward as we progress through the course of this month. One interesting thing, though, about the ridge that you mentioned, Joe, strengthening a little bit and forcing Larry a little bit further to the west. Yesterday, it looked like, maybe Larry would affect Cape Race, right at the bottom end of Newfoundland,
right?
More or less sideswiping it. Now it looks like the storm may actually be more of a direct hit.
If that ridge is stronger and it's further left,
right.
It could be, yeah.
Right.
I did notice. By the way, I did notice something on the 12Z runs today that I thought needed to be pointed out. Okay, so let me just. I'm bringing it up right now. I think it was the 12Z run that had this. Let's take a look.
And Bill Rogers, yes, I did report.
There it is. There it is.
I'm just going to answer Bill Rogers on the chat board. Yeah, Bill, I did indeed send my report into the National Weather Service at 3 a.m. this morning, because what else, after all of this mayhem, what else did I have to do except sleep at 3 a.m.? So that's when they got the report. And yeah, Joe, I see what you're talking about.
Yes, there it is, folks. Snow lovers, pay attention. It's the first one of the season.
Yes, indeed.
I mean,
Here we go.
Of course, it's 16 days from now, and it's in Montana and northwestern Wyoming, and you probably have to go into some elevation to see it. But my point is, it's on the map, so you know which way we're going here in the future.
And I'm sure they'll have somebody on the evening news, national evening news, if it does happen. I can't remember it snowing this early. Yeah, try thinking back, because what did we have last year or the year before?
Well, the blizzard last year around the 25th of September at Denver,
right?
Wasn't it? Yeah.
The day after a 95-degree day, right? Remember that?
Right, yeah. Exactly. So again, weather looks fairly benign. It's very typical in early September, since we've already had not only we not only had the entire month's worth of rain in one day, but we actually had October's rain added to that with what fell with Ida. And in fact, Joe, if you look at the rainfall amounts between Henri in the last 10 days, some places have gotten over 4 months worth of rainfall, maybe even more than that. But no matter, it looks fairly benign. Again, early Sunday morning, it's a bit of a warm front that goes by with a couple of showers. Just roll that back a little bit. The 12Z run didn't have much with it. The new run does, and then maybe another shower late in the day. Monday looks okay. Then we have a stronger front that comes in for Tuesday with another nice little high and the deep trough in the east that should steer Larry up along or just west of 60 degrees west and get it on out of here. That, by the way, if you look on the satellite, is pretty well defined here out in the tropical Atlantic. It is a hurricane. Top winds are 80 miles an hour on the last advisory. It's likely that it's going to become a major very soon, maybe by this time tomorrow. And there's another tropical wave behind it that they're looking at. The stuff in the Southwest Caribbean doesn't, there's some stuff flaring up there north of Honduras and Nicaragua, but Hurricane Center is not expecting much to happen there. Maybe something happens when it gets into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. and maybe it doesn't. So, by the way, tonight's poll, Joe Rayo, and then
Yes.
we're going to do Briller Jeopardy, and then we're going to end the show, and the poll is going to decide our fate for the next few days. So the question on the poll is, should Joe and Joe take Sunday off? So far, we've had 124 votes. 73% of the votes say yes, and 27% say no. So since I'm thinking that there's not a lot going on, or there won't be much going on, then we should take Sunday off and enjoy a nice restful weekend after everything that's gone on over the last couple of days. But I figured let's see what the pollsters, what the folks on watching the show have to say. So far, they're giving us Sunday off.
Was Mr. Reuben Fairchild the one who voted no in this poll?
Oh, he may
Whatever
have.
happened to Mr. Reuben Fairchild?
I don't know. I have no idea. None whatsoever. Anyway, you have Briller Jeopardy, I believe, which is taking a back seat to.
I do.
You do. It's taking a back seat. The last almost for the last week or so because of everything that's been going on. But now we're going to try our best to get back to normal here.
We're going to try that. Let us see. I'm wondering here, did I ever give you this one? He actually sent me, he being the chairman, he sent me actually two questions, two batches of questions, and he actually sent, Scott is amazing. I'm looking out my window and I'm watching my rain gauge filling up, and all this the stuff going left and right with tornadoes and everything. And right in the middle of all of this, I see somebody send me something on Messenger, and it was Scott sending me Briller Jeopardy. Now I'll give you the choice, Joe. I have two Briller Jeopardies here, which I don't think I've used. One of them is, let's give Mr. Chiaffi a choice. Does he want Briller Jeopardy about earthquakes or TV show debuts? Below, find both first earthquakes. And then another batch he sent me said, and this category, a top 10 movie debuts, get 8 out of 10 to pass within 3 years of debut to win free gas for the next 10 trips from New York from Georgia to New York.
Well, look, since we do the TV stuff a lot, just for a change of pace, I'm gonna pick earthquakes.
Okay, all right. So here we go. What 5 countries have recorded the strongest earthquakes in the world, and you need just 3 out of 5 to pass?
My God, the strongest earthquakes in the world?
The strongest earthquakes in the world, Joe.
Okay. Well, they always seem to have them off Japan, so I'll say Japan.
Japan is number 4 on the list of 5, 9.1 Richter scale in 2011. That was the, oh my goodness, I forgot the name. That's the one near the nuclear power plant in Japan. Remember that?
Yes, right, yes. All right, so Japan. They've had some, they've had some really big earthquakes in South America that I can recall over the last 20 years or so. And I think I can remember a couple of them in Chile. So I'm going to say Chile.
Chile is number 1 on Mr. Briller's list.
Whoa, look at that.
9.5 Richter scale earthquake in 1960.
Okay.
9.5. Wow.
So I'm thinking Alaska in the U.S.
Alaska
wasn't there one that was like an 8 there back in the late 40s or something? So
well, you're right.
I'll say
you're
the
right.
U.S.
You're right about Alaska. You're right about United States and Alaska, the representative there. And I was there, not during the earthquake, thank God, but in 2016 I was there in Anchorage, Alaska, which was like very close to the epicenter of a 9.2
Ooh,
Richter earthquake in 1964. And I remember, for whatever reason, I remember that. I think it was on a Friday night, Saturday morning when that hit. But in any case, if you ever go to Anchorage, Alaska, be sure to visit the museum that's dedicated to that. There were cars literally on the street that, because of the earthquake, it was going to like watching a one of those um, Emily organs or whatever. They
right.
were going back and
Back and
forth, back
forth.
and forth. Yeah, yeah, it was horrible.
All right, so I got 3. So let's see if I can get the other 2. Hmm. Well, you know what? I'm going to take this. I'm going to take a stab in the dark, since we all know that one of the great earthquakes was um, had a whole movie dedicated to it. If you remember, Joe, Krakatoa, east of Java.
And you
So,
want to know?
and that
And
was
you want
in Indonesia. So I'm going to say
right?
Indonesia.
And the funny thing about that movie is that if you look on a map, or if you go into your Funkin' Wagnalls or go on Wikipedia, you will find that Krakatoa was never east of Java.
No,
It's actually west of
west of
Java.
Java.
But whoever did the movie said, east of Java sounds better than west of Java. But
So,
you're right.
so according right, and since Hollywood ruled at the time, if they said it was east of Java, then it was east of Java. Okay.
And that was number 3, a 9.1 on the list, 2004. If I recall, that also was affiliated with a tsunami.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a famous supermodel, a woman, I forget her name. I think it was Polina Porakova, and she actually ended up climbing a tree to escape the main waves of the tsunami that was generated by this 9.1 earthquake. And her boyfriend was lost in the tsunami, and kind of
Oh,
a sad story. But
I remember that. I seem
yeah,
to recall seeing something about that. So I got four. I've got 4 of them. So I just got to get one more. You know what? I'm tired, so I'm just gonna, from the standpoint of geography, in terms of which country has like the largest landmass that could get an earthquake. So I'll say Russia.
Russia,
Oh,
Russia
Russia.
is number 5
No
on the
kidding.
chairman's list, and 9.0 in 1952.
Whoa. Gee, I must be smart then.
Yeah, and there you are.
And by the way, since the show's coming to an end, 73% say we should take Sunday off, and 27% said no out of 137 votes cast. So, Joe, you and I have Sunday off, which means the next time we will be back will be on Monday, Labor
Yes,
Day at
Labor Day.
7:30 Eastern time. We will be laboring. So, unless God forbid Larry becomes some sort of threat, or decides that's going to come closer to the East Coast before making the turn, we are going to be off on Sunday. So appreciate that the folks on the chat board voted to give us the day off.
All right. Can I
Okay.
give you the today's forecast?
Yeah.
So what I will do is I'll actually, let me just move my camera so you can see it, get a little bit of a better view here. Here's today's forecast.
Periods of irritability. I can't read the other one. Periods of irritability. I am up. I'm up. Isn't that enough? Periods of irritability throughout the day, and I can't read the last one because it's on an angle. 90% chance of the same tomorrow. Yeah, I pretty much go with that.
So there you go. And
All
that
right.
was that.
All right. So that was that. All right, folks. It's been a long week. It's been a very long week. So everybody have a good Friday and a good holiday weekend. And Joe and I will see you back on Monday at 7:30 Eastern time. 68 likes. Thank you for those of you who hit the like button. And we all have storm fatigue. So let's enjoy a few days away. I'll be posting lightly on my websites, meteorologistjoechaffee.com, weatherlongisland.com, and Angry Ben does nycweathernow.com. And the chairman hit super chat. Thank you, Scott, for hitting super chat tonight. He's, by the way, Scott's back to doing going to be back to doing COVID runs starting on September 20th. So getting his booster shot and stay safe out there. And anyway, I'm having dinner with Angry Ben tomorrow night, and I'll be posting lightly on my my subscription platform, and the link is up there on the top of the chat board if you're interested. It's a great way to support my YouTube channel and the Joe and Joe Weather Show. So have a great night and a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Nighty night.
Bye-bye, folks.